A little bit about Startup NV. As many of you know, I see a couple of new faces here. Those that I don't know, my name is Logan. I do community development and deal flow for Startup NV. We are a statewide incubator and accelerator group, and we provide capital and resources to Nevada-based ventures. So we do that through a number of initiatives, mostly programming-based, incubator, mentorship programs, boot camps, raising capital 101, et cetera, helping to drive some development in the startup and tech ecosystem here, which historically has had a number of challenges. And we're dropping the bucket and trying to make do some work here. So we're really excited to do that. We also invest in Nevada-based ventures. So we do that through our accelerator program, through our pitch pipeline. We have bi-weekly pitches. We do a bunch of other things. So happy to talk about those and go into more detail on those items. But really, we are here for Jamie Collyer to talk about leveraging social media to growth hack your startup. From vegan beauty products to Tesla, ride sharing to virtual reality, Jamie has been hooked on startup life for 15 plus years. Her career spans the West Coast tech hubs of Seattle and Silicon Valley while building a high growth teams in product and design. Now, 10 years into the Vegas life, with her daughter Josie, Ms. Collyer is delighted to be part of the continued growth of both the downtown and the Vegas tech and startup communities, which many of you have probably seen her out and about. She's a former Microsoft, former Amazon, former Metaverse recruiter. She's decided to launch now in recent times her own company into 2022 and build a future for food on Earth using sustainable, smart micro farms to create global solutions. In addition to being a plant-based mom and an Harborview Aggie mom,
yeah.
Jamie is an advocate of Web 3.0 education and works closely with the Vegas tech community to inform other users of new technologies with more secure options. And she's a really good proponent of the Las Vegas tech and startup ecosystem. So we're really excited to have her.
Hi, I'm Jamie Collyer. I know it feels like about 2/3 of you. I used to say 3/4 or maybe all. Thank you, Stu. Except that we're growing. And over the last couple of years that I have seen Vegas tech really take off post-COVID. It's exciting to see so many people here tonight and feel like I'm among friends and family, but also among people that are going to push me as I will push you in your startup ventures, right? As we do.
Jamie, where is your presentation?
Where's my present? There it is. Present. Okay, so about, let's see, in January, I was on I'm just going to jump right into it and I'll kind of weave some things in. One thing I don't know if Logan mentioned, but feel free to ask questions if you have something that comes up. A lot of what I'm going to be sharing is just kind of rapid fire. Here's a bunch of information. Happy to share this slide deck with you. If you just send me your email after or whatever, because it's a lot of information, but want to be open to questions. There's a lot of different things coming up in AI right now that I don't know and would love to learn from you, what you're using, what you're playing with, what you have found growth with, et cetera. So anyway, my name is Jamie Collyer. I have a degree in communications from a very long time ago, which I will tell you guys when. I've been in Vegas for 10 years. I sometimes know how to use the clicker. Sometimes I do not, but we're just going to go with that. Back in January, I was asked, well, prior to January, but in January, I was on a panel here in Startup Nevada in the Innovation Center that was about female entrepreneurs with Lisa Song-Sutton and a number of other ladies who we were talking about just kind of what it looks like to be a female entrepreneur and some of the highs and lows, the trough of sorrows, et cetera. And one of the things that had been coming up for me after leading the Metaverse and Web3 meetups last year through Tech Alley was this concept that we had played around with 10 years ago and really just dove into of growth hacking. And I mentioned it, and about a week later, I got a call from Faye saying, hey, we heard you say growth hacking. Would you be open to coming back in April and doing a whole session on just growth hacking? What does that look like? How do we get there? How do we, and even 4 months ago, the conversation around ChatGPT and AI hadn't even entered the conversation yet. So it was fascinating to rewind a year ago and be in this space going, how do we look into the metaverse and Web3? How do we use that? And so I spent a number of weeks putting together some of this material, digging into kind of what's currently out there. For those of you that don't know, I have been supporting family in Salt Lake City for about the last 5 weeks with a brother in a major accident. And so it's not as complex as I would like it to be, but I would love to develop it out. So that's why I said, feel free to ask questions and let me know what you guys are doing. Because basically the concept of growth hacking is just the concept of hacking. And so I'm kind of obsessed with this. I actually need to do this way because I don't know how to hold a mic that way. So let me take you back about 10 years. 10, 12 years ago, I was in Seattle working for a vegan nail polish company called Julep. And we were obsessed with getting people's email addresses, building email lists, testing A/B landing pages. Our marketing, product, and engineering team were so consumed with how do we get in front of people? How do we get email signups? How do we get this? And I literally spent about two hours in the middle of the night last night, almost chuckling, I didn't get much sleep last night, almost chuckling to myself at how much work that we put in to coding, writing, analyzing, looking at data, and fast forward 10, 12 years, and I literally wrote this entire deck in like ChatGPT, and you'll see it. So I'm amazed that we don't have to add hours and hours and hours in our day just to get the same results. We had whole teams, but what if you're a solopreneur? What if you're a content creator looking to just kind of boost your brand? What if you're an early stage startup and you are pre-seed or pre-series and you're saying, I don't know how to do all of these other things and get traction and build a community and have a social media presence and find out what the kids are using these days, right? So as I did with the metaverse and Web3, if you heard me talk about that, I wanted to take some of these, like all this big stuff, and see if I could simplify it. So let me know what you think for sure, but let's go back to the beginning. So Andrew Chen is somebody that I don't know if you guys have heard of him or studied him if you're in growth hacking, but about 10 years ago, and this blog post actually changed my life. That and Alexis Ohanian's Mr. Splashy Pants Reddit campaign, two things changed my life in 2020, both. Anyway, so the concept of growth hacking was when Airbnb and Lyft, this is where it first came onto the scene, and Dropbox and all of these, what we now know as unicorns back in 2010, were looking for ways without AI being implemented. They were looking for your email address. They were looking to reach you through Craigslist. They were looking to find and scale their audiences in ways that we weren't even aware that they were doing. And that's where the concept of growth hacking really first originated. And so the idea was, if you could basically take your marketing and product team and pair them with your engineers and say, how do we, and this is the wild, wild west, 10, 12 years ago, how do we take these marketing concepts and who we need to, and get them to the product team so they can build landing pages? It was a hot mess. I know, because I worked for a startup in Seattle called Julep, and we were going through this entire process in 2010 to get funded in our Series B by Andreessen Horowitz. And I don't know how many of you can say that you've gone through a round of funding with Andreessen, but it is intense and thorough. And one of the things that we were learning was we needed to be very specific on who our customer persona was, how much traction we had, how much data. And keep in mind, we didn't have the same data tools. We were hand coding a lot of these tools and a lot of these queries, as now I think of ChatGPT as just a big query in real time. And so please, just if we remember nothing, please know that you are so much better off than we were 10, 12 years ago. So even if you're just starting and you've done nothing with this, it's been a mess. So that's kind of where it started. Google Andrew Chen, that is a fantastic article to read, take a picture of it. So when we're talking about growth hacking, we're really looking at, and probably everybody in this room has seen this a million times over, I just stole it from the Google, but we're really looking at this area right here. When we're talking about growth hacking, we want to get the attention of kind of right in this area. By the time we've peaked and done all of this, and we're moving on to it, and this is just a product life cycle. It's not your exact startup or any of that, but It's saying, hey, if we're here, we might have maybe 5 people, or maybe we have 0 people, or maybe we have just an idea. But as we're looking at who would want to interact with us, whether it's a product, it's our content, it's our email marketing list, or we're saying, hey, I need X amount of, email signups just to get an investor to take a look at me. What does that traction look like, right? We're really talking about building a kind of a community, a core emphasis right on that spot. Now, this talk is assuming that you might have an idea, or you at least have some social media presence set up around your brand. If not, that's okay too. But a lot of the people that I've talked to over the last few years and the companies that I've worked with on this are kind of right in this. We've got a product, maybe we're pre-seed or right in that beginning stages, and we're ready to grow. We've got it outlined, we've got our business model, but now we just need to connect with people that want to hear what we have to say, want to test our product, want to engage with us. And how do we do that without spending $1 million? So I always say step one, and again, this is assuming that you have social media presence set up, you've got a product in mind, some of these very basics. If not, see Logan Brown and come go through an incubator. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that's not what this is about necessarily. It's assuming that you've got some of those already in place and you're like, okay, now what's the next, right? Step one, you have to imagine your customer and your community persona. A lot of times we want to grow so fast that we don't care who is following us or why. And that was the trend for a long time. That was the trend for about 10 years. And what we saw with Metaverse and Web3, the focus moving toward community and being very specific and more niche came to the forefront, especially over the last 2 to 3 years. And so as growth hacking is making a resurgence, the step one that please remember, again, these are high level basic concepts and we can drill in, is to really identify and be very specific. And the reason that's going to show up later, by the way, those are like all my favorite things right there. So if I was your customer, I'd want all of those things, including the scrunchie. But the reason it's key is because you can blast out, and we spend hours, I've spent hours of my career just trying to get numbers. And what we've realized in analyzing the data over the last 10, 12 years is that you have to be specific. You have to be clear and concise. And again, for this particular crowd, this is probably just old news, but I'm reminding you to stay there, to really understand, because if your ideal product or content person is a Gen Z, that's going to be a very different life cycle than if they're a boomer, or and I'm just going to use those stereotypes because we all kind of know, or those labels, but that's going to be very different, and we'll see that here in a second. This is something that actually came up for me about, I don't know, 2 months ago. Someone said this at a brunch, a Vengination. But it's basically the DHD-DH rule. I'm just gonna call it that. If it didn't happen digitally, it didn't happen. Now that can be a good thing. You might not want all your stuff online. I don't want all my stuff online. But keep in mind that when it comes to social proof and traction, especially if you're in startup, your personal brand, who you are, needs to be really, really thought of, because if it didn't happen digitally, it didn't happen. Because what we're going to see is the data, and what you want to be really clear on where we're going and what we're doing, right? So step one, understand who you're trying to attract, who you're trying to talk to. But then step two is all these ideas in your head. That's great. But if you can't prove to me that you've had those conversations and you've gotten those case studies and that you have connected with your ideal target, and I am not an investor, but I've sat through a lot of these talks, how do you show me? How do you show me that social proof? And so whether it was email list 10 years ago, or whether it's, customer reviews, case studies, going out and talking, wherever you're at in your startup, if it didn't happen digitally, it didn't happen at all. And I say that because I'm actually reinforcing that in my life. Yes, I spent 10 years interviewing gamers for Halo and Forza. And every day I go back and I'm like, who's that one person that I talked to about that one thing that was so good? If it didn't happen online, if it didn't happen digitally, it didn't happen. And again, that's great because you don't want everything online, right? But the ones that you do, just keep that in mind. The things that you actually want, the things that investors are looking at, and Logan, and there's all the people from Startup Nevada can help you with, hey, this is what we need to see, and reverse that. Because if you're not planning that out, over the next 6 to 12 months, you're not gonna have anything to show for it in social proof. I am finding that out as someone who has been working on her startup for a minute. So this is something that I came out of a conversation a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. I'm gonna call this the Lisa Reaver page, the next one, because it really got me thinking about, if I'm gonna tell you guys, you need to be posting 10 times a day, most of the people in this room might be like, oh my gosh, I've got a million things, like myself, right? How do I post 10 times a day to 5 different social platforms? And they all be unique. And if you ask me how to do this, I literally have done this for years as a full-time job, handwriting, all of these things. And Elias is laughing because we've done this. We've spent looking at the perfect hashtag. It is now so simple that I'm going to show you a kind of complex flowchart, the Lisa Reaver page, ladies and gentlemen. It's beautiful. Okay, we're going to walk you through it. It's a lot, but I will try to. So this was kind of a basic flow chart that came out of, thank you, dear. We had a conversation about this for like an hour, and this is picking one type of content, and I'll show you how you can multiply this to different things. But let's start over here, and I'll just kind of walk you through. So we were having this conversation, and I said, let's pick 10 topics, right? Okay, so you're in your niche industry. Actually, let me back up. This came out of a conversation where we were talking about, we need more content on our website, more SEO, but we need that content to then go to our social media. So we are, boosting our brand, and our customer life cycle is about a year, maybe a little bit less, but we're really trying to boost that engagement, drive traffic to our website, and then be able to track that data and see, we don't necessarily get a customer on the first click through, but we want to be able to track more of that. So of course, my brain from just the social media, now this is not all the other areas involved, but from a social media standpoint, I knew that if I said, well, okay, cool, you need to 10x your content posting. Lisa doesn't have a team. I'm gonna pick on you for a second, if that's okay. If not, okay. I'm assuming you don't have a team of copywriters on staff. Okay, good. If you did, then, okay, well, use this. But assuming you don't have a team of copywriters, assuming that maybe you don't have a degree in English or whatever else, right? And you're trying to wear a million hats. I said, okay, well, if we start with 10 topics, okay. What if you ask ChatGPT, what are 10 topics associated with the security personnel industry? Or this is where I fell down my rabbit hole, the climate industry. What are the most important concerns globally in climate and sustainability in terms of food agriculture? You guys should really fall down this rabbit hole at some point, I promise. So picking 10, I put it, these are high level. Pick 10 topics, ask GPT to pick them. What are the current topics in your industry or your niche or your community? These are just abstract numbers, by the way, you can use it as you want. So take 10 topics, all right. Then using those 10 topics, and I would recommend opening a Google Doc for this. Each of those 10 topics, ask ChatGPT to write a 300-word blog using that topic. This is fascinating. And I don't know how many of you guys were at Tech Alley, so I might be overlapping with Liz Lopez. I'm not sure because I wasn't in hers. Take those 300-word blogs and proof and edit them. They're pretty concise. I tried this on quite a few different topics. Proof and edit them. Then, so you've got your edited blog post on 10 different topics, which, by the way, is going to go into your WordPress site or whatever your website is, right? So then you take those and you take it over to Canva and you take a couple of those keywords, and Canva will create and find and generate photos for your blog posts based on what your blog post is about. They also will create templates for social media posting in Canva. Canva is one of the Canva 10 years ago, don't even. Canva today is like using if Instagram and Photoshop had a baby, I don't even know. So it's like, I swear, every time I open it, they've got a new AI feature. So you say, okay, so now I've got 5 photos for each post that I didn't have to spend hours searching for. And I've got 300-word blog posts and 500, whatever you want. All right, well, now I'm going to take that. I've got my 5 photos. I've got my 10 blog posts. Each of them are 300 words. I proofed them. They look good. I've got 5 photos each, right? For each of those, great. And some alt text, by the way, for those who cannot see the photos. Then I'm going to show you in 2 slides from now. I would challenge you to go and ask ChatGPT to create hashtags based on the top hashtags based on your particular blog post. Now, take those, and you don't have to use 50, by the way, you don't have to use 50 hashtags for each. Try 10 or try 5, right? But it'll give you a few just to get an idea. Open a Google Doc, call it hashtags, throw them in there, copy and paste. That's a growth hacking tip. By the way, I'm obsessed with hacking right now. If any of you know me, like some of this stuff is really fun. Take those 10 blog posts, throw them into your WordPress site or whatever your site is. You can also double check it against ChatGPT for SEO. So you've got 10 blog posts scheduled. Now, if you are using, I've been a WordPress developer for 10 years, so that's where I'm going to go. But if you've got 10 blog posts, I'll make this faster. Plug them in there, schedule them to go out over the next, say, 10 days. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because you're trying to get people back to your assuming just based on this one model, right? And you can use this any number of ways. If you take those 10 blog posts and your hashtags and you've got your photos, I would then, and I'm going to show you in just a second, I'll actually show you how I did this on ChatGPT. Then you're going to go and you're going to create 5 Twitter posts for each. So that's a total of 50. But I'm going to show you how to do that really very, very, very quickly. You're going to create 5 LinkedIn for each 10 with a paragraph specific to LinkedIn, right? Because the challenging part about creating a lot of this social media, and I know this because this used to be my full-time job, was the fact that you had to go and write different, I don't know how many of you have done this, but you had to go and write a very different caption if for each platform and different hashtags depending on the platform and all of that. So that didn't matter how many hours it took you to write your blog post. That was actually, this is where I got lost the most, creating unique to each platform. ChatGPT can do all of that. So then, and I recommend Canva again for this, but I would love to hear if you guys have a better one currently. For $12.99 a month, this is amazing. Then you pull up your monthly content calendar, which posts to Pinterest and LinkedIn. And I just picked 5 of the top, but you can pick which, there's so many in there. And you pull up that calendar and you start copying, pasting into your calendar. Pick the beginning of the month, pick 2 hours at the beginning of the month. Fill out your calendar. And this is something I can help you with a little bit more, because this is where it gets a little bit interesting. You're not scheduling all 50 on the same day, right? You're kind of optimizing, so we can talk about that. But if you had 250, because now you've got 5 Twitter posts for each of your 10 blog posts, and you want to, and your blog post will have call to actions, I'm assuming it's on your website, it's going to showcase your product, especially if you're an early stage and you want traction, you want, maybe that's a landing page, maybe it's a blog post that goes to a landing page or something like that. So showing all that, plug those into your monthly calendar and just hit send. I'm going to actually spend about 2 to 3 hours tomorrow I've done about half of this, doing the rest of this, and just automate it for the month. See where it goes. This is the sentence that I asked, and it was just part of what I was playing around with. I asked ChatGPT to rewrite this sentence 10 times. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, I asked it 5 times. Just this one sentence. And as you can see, instead of me sitting here in my brain trying to go, okay, but if I take this sentence and a link to my blog and 2 to 3 hashtags the ChatGPT recommended, I just take that, one of my photos, because you're gonna have featured photos, and that's one entire post. Take the second one, put your link, put it on another day. Take your third link. In fact, and if there's a tool out there that can do this, please let me know, because if there's a tool that actually can combine all of these and mix them up, and then maybe there is. Is there? So I kind of want to just put them all in my seatbelt. All right, my talk is done. All right. I did not know about that. So I was like, because where I got hung up is, okay, now I got to write a blog post, but then I've got to shorten it over here. But then I've got to go, and I would spend hours I thought it was interesting that ChatGPT would give me a lot of different hashtags, because often I'm here generating lists of hashtags, doing all that. This is just one example. I'm going to double check it against that. That was awesome. I'm like, man, you want to? Okay. So some of the rest of this is tips and tricks and different things. Some of the kind of switching gears, that was just a flow chart on one thing. But I don't want to, I feel like I'm getting a little bit in the weeds on how to do that. And there's probably automation that can do it by the time I'm done with giving this chat. This is a no-brainer, but yet when I work with clients on marketing specifically, I typically go through their socials. And the first thing I see is, their website's not there. I don't understand what their business does. Their personal brand's all over the place. Again, some of this is kind of a no-brainer, but I really like the Furby. But I would also say that if you're really, really serious about this, updating your profiles weekly with your new landing pages, whatever you're trying to test out, new product, especially if you're in growth hacking and you're an early stage startup, your personal brand as a founder or CEO or CTO is really going to be important. And often we don't think of our own personal social medias. So something that I would recommend, updating your profile weekly. I keep wanting to go that way. All right, some of these other things are just, again, you've probably heard a lot of these, but creating major FOMO, looking at different apps, looking at where the people are at currently. This room, the demographic, I don't see probably any Gen Z, Gen Alpha, Gen Z. Are you Gen Z? Okay, you don't have to. Yeah, I love it. Okay, most of us are like Gen X and millennials, so it's I'm always trying to figure out how to gear that toward a different audience. But one thing that has stayed the same over the last 10 years is FOMO, community. Making people realize that they want to be a part of whatever it is that you're doing in a non-intrusive way. And so recently with my own, I'm so blessed to be a part of this ecosystem, but recently I actually, as of yesterday, decided to shelf my own startup and work on a couple of other projects. That's news to everyone. It was on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm putting my own on hold for a while. I'm actually interviewing for a couple of full-time jobs in business development, nonprofit, and startup ventures. I find that I'm much better on a team than trying to lead the team, and we're going to take a step back. But I'm looking forward to, because one of the things that I have greatly appreciated here in Vegas Tech is the sense of community that we've built. And so, it can be very lonely at times. We talked about this, the Trough of Sorrows, in January on our panel. It can be very lonely to be a startup founder or an entrepreneur or whatever that label is, and trying to do a million things. And one of the things that I was finding for me personally was, I've got this community, and I don't know how to quite get them to. I'm not sure what I'm asking them, and I skipped the first step. When I will be very transparent, because putting together this slide presentation, I realized, and I was actually going to lead with this, why am I not doing these things? Like, this is a moment of transparency, because y'all are family now, whether you like it or not, because we're all here part of Vegas Tech. But I realized I wasn't doing a lot of this stuff. And so how could I stand up here in front of you guys and say, you guys, this is great stuff. We should do it for your startup. Why am I not doing it? And it came to me over the last week that I was preparing for this. I'm a little scared of managing all these people. What happens when you build this? If you build it, they will come. And so if they'll let me come back in 6 months, I'll give another talk here at Startup Vegas or Startup Data on what to do and how to engage that community. But I was realizing I can get you in a room and we can talk about different products and do different things. But what happens after that? And how do we have those deeper conversations? You and I have talked about it. How do we have those deeper conversations? And so keeping in mind when we're growth hacking, if I can give you a couple of nuggets. Number one, know who you're trying to talk to. That's what I skipped. I was trying to build plants and understand how we grow plants and whatever. I use my own experience from this and talking to PhD level scientists botanists about how to grow plants on space. And I didn't talk to I talked to very few potential clients and potential customers and community. Yeah, I have people talking about urban plants, but I didn't sit down 6 months ago. Where I failed was to really build a vision for what I wanted to do. So I was spending all this time getting people in the door and having these conversations and doing all this. And at 6 months in, I realized I didn't really have anything to show for it. As I'm putting together this talk, as I know what to do, you ever like know what to do and you're not doing it. And so here I am standing in front of you today going, I could tell you do this and do this and do that as I'm telling myself. And I just want to be really transparent about that, because a lot of times we have numbers. I have a large social media following, I have a large LinkedIn, but what am I actually doing with it? Right. And so that's just something I'm being transparent with you guys, is we can have these robots build it for us. And I love that idea. But I also want us to remember like who we're trying to interact with and why at the core. That's just my little soapbox on the side. Okay, so now here's a really fun story, because I really liked this. I fell into this. Jennifer Smith from Scribe, co-founder of Scribe, 8 months pregnant. I totally love this story. 8 months pregnant, need to raise a Series B. It doesn't need to, but said, hey, I am going to be out for a while and we need to keep the doors open. Hello. And I've got about 2 weeks to do this. Now, this is maybe an exception, but it's some key nuggets. So she said, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. If you're 8 months pregnant and you got to get it done. And if you want, I'll share this couple of links to this article if you guys need it. There's multiple articles, but anyway, looking at being very specific with your ask. And I threw this in here because not every startup founder needs social media presence. Like, what do we do with followers? Some of you guys need, like I did, we need money. And or we need a team, or we need some kind of resources. And I think kind of why I was diatribing a second ago is leading into this of when you're very specific, and this is what I didn't do, and this is what I'm still learning. When you're very specific upfront about what you actually already have in data, what you have, the traction that you've put in, because a lot of us already have emails, or we have a social media presence, or we have, a group of investors, a group in our community. And if we're able to be very specific, and I'm going to walk you through a couple of steps. So she had, now maybe the difference between her and you is she already had a small team and she was going for her Series B. But so she had already done some of this due diligence ahead of time. Sorry if it's Series A or Series B. I got to go back and look. She basically said, okay, I've got several days to put together all of my data. I'm going to make a short list. It's not 200 investors. And this is something I was working on with Josie, is 15 to 30 tops. 5 is too little. I think she had about 15 conversations. You don't need 200 investors. In fact, there's probably not that many in your niche area. Urgency, bump up the timeline. And this is something that you'll kind of see throughout, creating FOMO, creating a sense of exclusivity, bumping up the timeline. Not everybody can invest in 2 weeks. Not everybody can have a conversation. She reached out to her networks and she said, who can you introduce me to in this time frame? Who can actually write me a check in this time frame? Who's in my niche market? And I don't know if you guys have used Scribe, it's actually fantastic. Who would be willing to have a conversation with me? I'm about to go on maternity leave. And she had a very clear and concise ask going into it as well. And so one of the things that I've sat through a bunch of pitches here in the Vegas tech community over the last couple of years, and I've met with quite a few investors on my own. You have to be clear and concise. And I don't know how many of you are going for founding, but what I'm going to love about tomorrow's event specifically is I can guarantee that those startup founders and those teams have really honed in on what they're asking those investors who are going to be in that room, because they know they've got like one shot. And so that's having a very clear and direct ask, having all of your data, having your due diligence, knowing what they're going to ask you ahead of time, and then going in a very quick amount of time. Because if you've done anything in sales, what I would that it's all about that ask. I feel like I'm not telling her story as well as she could tell her story, but and then having a set of sequencing, knowing what your follow-up is and knowing where you're going with that. And I didn't have any chat GPT, except that I started to look into other founders who had raised funding. And this is just one who had done it in a very small amount of time. But I would like to be able to share with you next time or whenever more success stories. And that was one of the things that came up at Tech Alley. What are companies that are doing this right now on the ground with like a handful of people? And I started to do some of that research. I didn't get to all of it. So if you know of any companies or founders that are like, hey, I need to close funds here. Now, in 2023, this might not be as normal as maybe a couple of years back, but I'm fascinated by those that have, like, especially in the startup founder space, that are finding ways. Again, the growth hacking is really just little hacks. How can we cut a corner, but cut some time off of this? If you've ever used like time blocking, that's a hack. If you are listening to Audible on 2x speed like I do, that's a hack. If you are combining the two of those, that's a hack. If you are, you're probably hacking a number of just things in general in your life, and you don't even know it. So if you can apply that concept, and I'm fascinated by startup founders and entrepreneurs who are looking at this going, we can take this traditional way, or we can hack it. We can go in there and say, what's new, what's exciting, what's different, what can we get done in less time? So I'd love to hear some more on that. All right, here's some of the things that I'm playing around with right now. I would love to hear some of your feedback on what you guys are playing around with. But here are some of the things that I have dug into probably within the last year or two. Lemonade is actually not, it's very, very, very new. But what I found is very specific to, you know, there's the boomer generation, Gen X, millennial, Gen Z, and now we're into Gen Alpha. They're not quite purchasing yet, but their parents are. Where does your target audience live? That, going back to number one, when you know very specifically, my target audience is 28 to 32-year-old, female who goes to Faith Lutheran and she makes 120 and she, whatever. Love those Faith Lutherans. When you get really specific, finding them online isn't as hard. It's usually when we feel overwhelmed by like, there's a bazillion, trillion, million people online, I don't know where to find them. It's because we haven't done that first step of like, who are they? Let's sit with that person. But what I love is that often I don't love it, but I'm acknowledging, I am not actually spending time on new and trending apps. And this is something that this year I actually have dug into. I started last year with the metaverse and I played around with a lot of that space, but I found that I wasn't actually, as a consumer, I could tell somebody else how to get in there. I could tell somebody else how to maybe build a community in Snapchat, but am I building a community? So it's something that I'm constantly challenging myself on, even if it's, oh, well, that's what the young kids are doing. Technology changes daily. We were not even talking about AI and ChatGPT coming into this year. We were literally like, oh, we're done with that metaverse stuff and Web3. Okay, we're not done with Web3. Teacher, don't laugh. We're not done with Web3, but we're like, I don't know. I think we should all challenge ourselves to get out of our comfort zone, no matter what age, and play around with different apps. Because there is so much out there that when I started to just get into, I've been into Lemonade the last couple of weeks, which is fantastic. Or I haven't gone into MeWe, but MeWe, I haven't played around with that in like forever. I think I signed up when it first came out years ago. It's on Snap, I'm on Discord, I'm on Mastodon, I'm on WhatsApp, but like, have I actually built a community on there? Like, we're on these things, but when we think about growth hacking, the idea is, how do you get in there and hack it? Like, how do you get in there and say, okay, what do I need to do different? How do I put on my engineering hat or my product hat and say, who's in here? Because we have so much, but I don't want you to go, okay, I've got to be doing more. And so I am no expert. If you've ever heard me speak, it's from the learning experience. Give me a topic and I'll deep dive into it if I find out what I don't know, and then ask me a million questions and I'll come back in 2 months and answer those, right? It's more for the, let's learn together, because there's so much out there that we can utilize. And most of this is free, which I found really exciting, or very inexpensive. Like Canva Pro, I think is $12 a month. And with the AI features and all of these different things, you go, maybe I don't have to hire a staff or an extra person. Maybe I can, cut some costs over here because I could spend 2 hours a week doing this versus, And that's exciting to me, especially when it comes from like, yeah, go ahead, a startup space.
Yeah.
Well,
Please jump on in.
I'm really curious about.
I mean, it's easy.
The difference.
So the question was, can you tell us what the difference is between some of these platforms and apps that maybe you're not familiar with? Sure. So a lot of us are familiar with Snapchat, which is kind of precursor, I don't want to say precursor to Instagram. Yeah, precursor to Instagram Reels. So it's had real time. I think I read today it has 750 million active monthly users, mostly in the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and millennial space. It is good for, you can do like group chats, you can do, I think they said several million snaps are being sent per moment. You can do build community groups. What I have found out recently on WhatsApp is you can actually find and build community groups within WhatsApp. I don't know how many of you are using that for an actual social platform versus I'm in this group with the 4 people that I know, or I'm texting my cousin in England. So that's something I've recently started playing around with. They have groups, communities within WhatsApp. Mayway is, I just looked this up today. I was trying to find a couple of new ones. Mastodon is kind of like a Twitter alternative. Mayway, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on that one. Quora is like a question and answer. So it's kind of like another Reddit. And you can also see Quora is a great place to become a subject matter expert. It's similar to Patreon in that you can have paid subscriptions, you can build a community that way, but you can also say you want to become a subject matter expert in, whatever your niche field is, and you've got all these blog posts and you want another avenue that can't just live on your website. Let's start to test that on an audience that is going to review your articles or your answers. And this is going to be really interesting, by the way. Let's play with this for the next year, because some of these sites are based on human answers, human interaction, and I am fascinated to see, will you know if you're talking to an AI or an actual human within this year? Do you know now? I don't know.
Well, Jamie, if you will, actually, I think this is one of your second to last slides.
Yes.
We will let you finish up,
Okay.
and then, of course, we will pivot full frontal
yeah,
through the. Up to you.
Okay, so that's it. Okay, so just Discord as well. I got into Discord when I was gaming. It's it's similar, but very different from WhatsApp in that it has, you can find anything that you want on servers. You can be a part of anything globally. I've seen DAOs move into Discord. And we can get into that. So it's a very community-based if you haven't used it. But again, some of these came out as basic functionalities. Like I was like, oh, why would I use Discord if I'm using WhatsApp? And now that's what I was fascinated to find out, revisiting the added features like Canva. I feel like every day they have a new feature. Lemonade is something I'm really excited about. I've been on TikTok for a minute, but I haven't growth hacked TikTok. Lemonade is a spinoff. It's a ByteDance product as well. So I'm actually interested. But if you're into fashion, if you or your ideal client is into fashion or lifestyle or beauty, Lemonade is like if Pinterest and Instagram and Canva had a baby. And if you like women doing glute exercises, there's a lot of that. A lot of glutes, lots and lots of glutes. So if you're not into glutes, don't look at it, because it's a lot of 21 to 28-year-old women showing off their fitness. But I'm fascinated by using it just because it's my target audience. And then what I would challenge is like, how many new apps are we trying? I mean, I would be curious, how many new apps do you go on just to try it, even if it's free? And I realized that I've been in technology for 10 and 15 years. And I'm like, yeah, but if it's not on LinkedIn, so until this year, right? Or whatever. I'm challenging myself. How many new apps can I try? Because if we're going to hack things, we don't know what the next Facebook or Instagram. And I will say really quick that I just looked at the time, that we're in an era, and if you remember nothing else, where Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, all the ones we're used to are, we're going to go next gen. There's going to be a new uprising, and we see this about every 10 years. And so with the distrust of big tech, you can almost guarantee that there's going to be a wave of new apps. And so I am now this year committed to looking at and providing some value to my community on what are some of these new apps that we could be using and how we could scale that. So I think that was the last one. There might be one more that Let's see. This was for you, and I didn't finish the slide, so it doesn't say anything except that. It's because Canva's great. This slide was for her, and I didn't get there. So that slide, that's it.
Well, tell you what, first of all, thank you so much. And with that, we will open it up to questions from the audience.
Sure.
But your first question over there.
Telegram, why wasn't Telegram featured on the upcoming latest and greatest apps? Probably because I didn't think of it today or yesterday when I was creating that. Nothing except I've played with Telegram, Signal, and compared them to WhatsApp and Discord, but not to the extent that I did it for today's session. So I'm happy to look into that. Is there anything about Telegram that you particularly like? I've experimented. Okay, yeah. The question and kind of the commentary was that we are still playing with Telegram. We're not sure. I'm not entirely sure where it compares to some of the other ones. But does anyone else in the room have experience? Andy, do you have experience with? The comment was that Telegram was 10 years old. I will say on this app though, half of these are 10 years. I say latest and greatest because some of them are now coming to the forefront as like, okay. And some of them we don't, quite.
Jamie,
No.
There's a question from online.
Okay.
And it sounds like, outside of your critical expertise in growth hacking and so you're leveraging these apps and social media, you might also become a known reviewer in this tech community for various apps. But we have a question from Nathan online. I see that ChatGPT is really powerful and is by far the best out there. I'm on the wait list. Is there any alternative that you would recommend until I get access?
Nathan, that's a great question because I didn't know there was a wait list.
You were the first ones there, probably,
Is anyone else not on ChatGPT that has?
Oh, it's called the ChatGPT 4.
4.
I'm assuming, Nathan, I'm going to make an assumption here and say that you're ChatGPT 4. I mean, there's Google Bard that is trying. It's not nearly as good.
I've only played with the latest. I didn't chase them.
Oh. Yes, ChatGPT 4.
Bing has it because Microsoft bought it, right? Did
Correct.
Microsoft buy ChatGPT and they've been using it for years.
Nathan, Jamie is going to go do some research and she's going to let you know.
Can somebody take notes on the homework that I have?
I am.
I love it.
We have
I volunteer or say yes to giving talks like this because the stuff that I don't know, I get to deep dive and actually look into. Yes, go ahead. And I will find out Telegram versus Signal versus all of that and how we can utilize them efficiently in our brands. Go ahead. The question was if we're never going to do this, how can we outsource? Or who can we find to do this work? What qualities? Sure. What qualities does this kind of person or company or team have that could implement some of this if I'm not going to do it? Is that the question? Right. Well, then my first task for you would be really think about what you want to accomplish with that. What is your next 6 to 12 months? I have a background in marketing and digital marketing long before any of this stuff. What can we? I think we're going to see the possibilities are pretty infinite. I think this year, if I had to predict, kind of like what I was playing around with last year in Web3 and Metaverse, I think this year and the subsequent years, we're going to see a pop-up, kind of like we saw a pop-up of WordPress developers 10 years ago, or a pop-up of, UX, UI, whatever, web designers. I think we're going to see people who focus in this niche, may not be called growth hacking, but AI marketing specific, how to combine the tools, because we now have a toolbox. And if you're not proficient in Canva and Telegram and this and how to combine, how to get them all talking together. And I think that's where, yeah. The question was, is being on a marketing team, are you going to have to be proficient in some of these AI tools? And I would say absolutely. Just like even when I was talking about growth hacking And I use air quotes now because it seems like it was just so, we were writing code for a lot of this stuff 10, 12 years ago. And I'm going, we don't have to do that anymore. So I think it's going to be a key part. And if you really want to stay ahead of the curve, you're going to understand a little bit of AI at least, and how it can benefit, how it can automate, and how it can ramp up things that you just don't have time for.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a big part of it.
Excellent. Go to this gentleman here and then lady in the middle.
Go ahead. The question in summary was, don't you think because we've had some of this around for a minute and we're starting to see it in schools and we're starting to see it in music and entertainment, do you think within the year or soon we'll be able to decipher? My follow-up then would be, do you mean we as humans or other chats, other bots? That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So the second half of that was, are we going to have governance around, what is written by a bot or an AI and what isn't? And that really, like, we could spend the rest of this evening, I could geek out on that for a long time, because that gets into moral and ethical questions, philosophical questions that we were talking about with Web3 as well, right? Like, how do you, if things are open source and we're writing things on blockchain, like and everything's transparent. This is another layer, because I don't know the answer to that right now. I will try to find out, but it poses a metaphorical world in which we don't know if what we're getting is misinformation or not, because we don't know if it's coming from an AI or an actual trusted source. And how would you know? Who decides that? Oh my gosh, can we come back next month and just talk about that? Get an AI speaker, we'll come back. Not me, I don't know, I'm not the expert here, but somebody is. And that poses very good questions as we're creating content to keep in mind and I'll just add, for your clients, your customers, your community, right? People you want to trust you. How would you, that's just a question I'd like to pose to the group. How would you be able to authentically say, this is me and my trusted area of expertise versus something I just had a bot write or an AI write for me? That's a great question.
We'll come down to you and then.
You've been working in AI for a long time. And just to recap what Anne said, she's been working in AI for a long time. And it's going to look very different in a year or two, because why would anyone go to your website when they could just type information? And that poses a bigger question. Why would they go to a Google browser, et cetera, if we've got some of these AI tools? And I don't know the answer to that either. Again, like, take notes.
I'm taking notes right now. Andy, please.
Oh no, I'm scared of Andy's question, whatever it is. I'm trying to summarize that. Too long, didn't read. ChatGPT is Microsoft's imposter syndrome. So the question was dealing with imposter syndrome and something that, if you are simultaneously trying to growth hack and trying to put this, create this following and create this persona as a subject matter expert, but you're also trying to become that subject matter expert, because, I mean, let's be honest, as a plant-based founder 6 months ago, I didn't know how to, I'm like, how do we go plant some boxes, right? Like, switching from metaverse and headsets, I feel imposter syndrome right this moment, for sure. Literally standing here. How do we balance that, I think, was the question. And I don't know. I think I can only speak to my own personal and some of the people that I've worked with. Sometimes it is, yeah, you got to just fake it till you make it, but you're also expected to know and carry and be responsible for a whole lot of information. And I think that that's where we can, in our growth hacking, when we think of looking for ways that we can readily pull information, because I'm constantly like, oh my gosh, they're gonna ask me something I don't know, and I'm gonna look like the girl who like threw these slides together in like 10 minutes, which is kind of true, but 5 hours. Anyway, as someone who constantly works through that in her own space, I would say that none of us are complete experts in emerging tech, because it's emerging and it's constantly evolving. And what I can ground myself into from the last 10 years working in tech is that it's going to change. The only variable is it's going to change. And so counting on that as you're looking through, being specific with who you want to connect with. And that's where I'm working through that process of like, oh gosh, I got this big group of people. What do I do with them now? Okay, I've got them all into a room, and that's part of growth hacking. Let's get them all into a room. But we also need to be more clear and more specific on what do we do with them. And I think that's just a work in progress that I'm still working through as a first-time founder. And one of the reasons I actually shelved my startup this week, family stuff, my daughter stuff, and I realized I needed to take a step back from it for a minute because I wasn't clear on what I wanted to do next with that group, if that makes sense. I got them all into a room and then I'm like, hey guys, could you hold on a second? Because I don't know what to do with you. And so I think it can be very daunting to say like, oh, I don't know how to stand up in front of a room and be this expert. And I think the world also needs more people who say, hey, I don't know how to use ChatGPT, but I'm willing to learn, like schedule me a talk and I'll learn as much or whatever that is, right? As we learn together, because all of you in this room know lots more about different things than I know, right? So I don't know if that answered the question necessarily, but just keeping that evolution mindset, like we're all growing. Last year it was Metaverse Web3 and blockchain, and we've seen dips and ups and downs in that even in the last 18 months. And so now it's like we're all jumping bandwagon to AI. We're all learning together because even though this technology has been around, I was hiring these guys 10 years ago. Mainstreamed is just now like, oh, we finally have tools to utilize this in our day. So I think we should give ourselves a little grace, I guess.
Excellent. Thank
That
you
was
so much.
long-winded.
Yeah, no, that was actually,
Talk later.
we're all learning to learn these tools. We should all give ourselves a little grace to see what the practical
Correct.
applications are. Excellent.
And
I think we had a question, gentlemen, here in the front.
Oh, go ahead. The question was, how do I build a community on men's health? How to talk about men's health?
So like maybe a community that's a little less mainstream, less known about, but it's very pertinent and very something that we should discuss. Yeah.
I would like to defer to the Dollar Razor Club on this one. And I don't know, are you familiar with the brand, the Dollar Razor Club? And there's Him and Hers is another brand as well that talks about, if you guys are familiar with that. I haven't done a deep dive into that, but I would say in overall niche community building, going back to step one in really identifying your customer or community persona. Who is this man? Where does he spend time online now? Or does he? I mean, I've worked with some people that say, hey, my preferred customer really isn't on social media. What do I do? Right. And I think in that, and we can talk after this and deep dive a little bit more, but I think it goes back to just basic principles of how do you build a niche specific, almost around one topic. Like I'm building a community around people who like to grow plants in controlled environments, indoors, in tough environments, right? That's so niche. There's like 5 people doing it or whatever. But I think I'd love to talk to you more after about how to build that around a specific topic, right? Or a specific, where's this niche group?
Yeah, that's a really excellent point about really spending some time to identify who your customers, and I think Jamie's key point is where are they spending time online? Yeah.
Because I feel like we all do on our phones and such in some way, but again, that's why exploring some of these apps that we haven't heard of, maybe your customer's there, maybe they're on Reddit all day, every day, but you're just not on Reddit. So you're like, oh shoot, where's my customer? And I think as we start to compare some of those, I'd love to deep dive with you on that.
Yeah.
Great question. Okay, I'm going to summarize that. So the question was, how have I built my personal brand? And this is something that I have geeked out on for, probably 15 years. I've been a new tech person since at least 15, when I started teaching myself how to write WordPress code, CSS, JavaScript, just so I could have a fashion blog living in Valdosta, Georgia 15 years ago. And my daughter was first born and I was working for a physical therapy clinic and all this stuff. But for me, it was a couple of things. And I recently read a book called 48 Laws of Power, which I would highly recommend. A couple of things I would say is if you don't have any money, be memorable. That's really worked for me. When I got thrown into video game recruiting for Halo 10 years ago, I just was like, hey, I'll work for you guys. One of the things that I found was that nobody was recruiting on LinkedIn. And I was like, well, I'm on LinkedIn. And I don't know how I was getting a computer to do whatever. So I dyed my hair pink and I just started to just become what I wanted to attract. And for me, the idea of personal branding feels very much like imposter syndrome, to be honest, because I struggle with like, if I have to put myself out there, then I got to be this thing and da, da, da. I'm still learning as well, but I've managed to grow my personal brand being mostly authentic and unique, but finding what works and what doesn't. And I think everybody should. Now, I go back to if it didn't happen on digitally, it didn't happen at all. And that's good and bad. So as what's worked and what hasn't, oh my gosh, a lot of stuff has worked and some of it's really blown up in my face. And I'm still learning, but I know that by getting plugged into like a community and just learning around things, I'm trying, if that makes sense. Most of it's because I'm scared and I'm like, well, if I get up there, then maybe that'll impress somebody else to get up there. But I think it's, if you are on a tight budget, be as memorable AF. Like find a way to stand out, find a way to go into your niche. And I geek out because I was like, gamers, how do I go niche into one or two things? And I think for me, it's gonna sound weird, but because I'm a redheaded girl who isn't afraid to like shave her head and dye her hair pink and wear clothes from the thrift store, that worked for me because that was who I was anyway. But it also worked because I was talking to artists and different things, and I've had a lot of fun. I've played around with different hashtags. I've played around with like last year, I was the metaverse maven until I wasn't. And then I was girl in the green dress. And I still haven't figured out what to do with that one, but I'm like, I'm gonna keep hashtagging it. Maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a, so if you enjoy that, play around. It gives you what I will say about being in the digital space, you can be anything you want. And especially with avatars. So play around, have fun with it, and maybe explore a little. But I will say some of it works and some of it really doesn't. The question was, I had mentioned in my talk, updating your profile weekly. And it's a pro tip. Like if you really want to stand out, updating your profile. How many social media profiles do you have as a business or personally?
As a business, probably just one on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Professionally, maybe two.
Well,
Personally, two.
I would say for LinkedIn, when I say updating, I am looking at kind of SEO. And so it doesn't have to be a major overhaul. But keeping in mind that search engines are going to be indexing how often you are contributing to some of these, and also the social media platforms you're on are also indexing and algorithmically figuring out, okay, sorry. I was like, what is that word I'm looking for? How often you're on there and how often you're contributing. So are you posting? I like to, and what I've seen is by refreshing even a couple of words, updating maybe with that, check out my recent blog post in the top section, like in the about section, you're tweaking it in a way that is making the AI behind take a look at it and say, oh, you're active. Oh, you're active. So it doesn't mean major overhaul. Maybe it's, hey, in June, I put a specific cover photo for all of June. And then in July, I have a new cover photo. It could be things like that. But by keeping it, it's kind of like updating your website. The reason we have a blog on our website is so that Google is indexing, it's taking a look at it, it's keeping us fresh for SEO. It's the same with your social preference, even if it's just change one. Okay, this week I was like hashtag sustainability, now hashtag climate, hashtag something like that. So it's indexing and it's taking a look. And so that you're showing up more relevantly.
So I guess let me just follow up. So it's not just being active in those platforms like liking posts or making posts, but acting as like making changes to your profile itself.
Well, and think of them as two different things. One is, hey, this is my address, this is my storefront, this is my, and I'll try to be brief, but this, like your LinkedIn profile is kind of like your website. It's like, I mean, if you don't have a website, you should put everything in LinkedIn or some of these free socials, because that's where you get to host everything. That's everything. So that's your residence. And then on top of that, you're going out and you're commenting and you're liking, follow for follow, those kind of things. And so that also plays into the algorithm. And why I say to update it is because often that's the last thing. When I work with clients, I'll look at their website and be like, why have you guys not updated this? And they're like, well, our website's the last thing that we work on, but we're trying to get new clients. And I am encouraging people to also be thinking about both and little tweaks. Just spend 15 minutes, just add a couple things. It refreshes the search engines as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Gentleman in the back, and then we have one from online, and then we will close this to Ben. Hey, there we go.
Hey there.
Go ahead. That is a great question. So the question was, and I'll repeat it, yep. The question was, a lot of the information tonight seemed very B2C. And how would I create a strategy as a B2B and scale that as somebody who's direct to business? It's interesting that you say that because I almost created this entire deck to be broken into B2B and versus B2C. And I kind of just created it in a way that just was very overall. Because that's something that actually came up at Tech Alley, was like, how do we as B2B without giving away privacy and data? And I think it's similar, but one of the things that, and I won't say that I know something if I don't. One thing I haven't played around with as much in the last year or two is business to business page interaction data, the data specific on business to business page interaction. So I don't claim to be an expert on that one exactly. I've done a lot of work in B2C. I'm happy to do a lot more research in B2B for this group especially, and reach out to you or whatever, however I can be of service. But a lot of the work that I had done was like getting initial traction as like a startup founder who needs to say, hey, I've got case studies, hey, I've got signups, hey, I've got initial interest in this, versus now I'm at a stage where I can actually sell to B2B. So let's have a conversation about that, because I'm not as expert in that. And maybe there's probably people in this room that have a lot more in that, and I'm happy to learn and grow. But I don't want to give you false information or information that I'm not qualified to give you just yet, as I'm still learning. So I'm happy to craft it and come back for part 2 and it just be B2B. Because I'm actually, in 2 to 3 months, we're going to know a whole lot more using these tools.
Well, I appreciate your transparency there, Jamie. Last question from online, and we will close out this event, but please feel free to stick around. This is from Nathan online. I'm trying to get signups for a waitlist for a fitness platform. I'm assuming that he's developing. I heard that building a Facebook group could be an effective way to do this. Is there merit to that, or would you recommend a different method?
So the question, well, they could hear you, right? On that.
Yes, yeah, I got it. You're good to go.
Okay. Facebook groups tend to attract a certain demographic. And so I would say that if your customer persona spends most of their time interacting in Facebook groups, that's where you should go. And if you're looking at the fitness clients in general and trying to figure out how to build a community with them, they, depending on the age, and I'm no expert, but if I had to niche this, they may not all be on Facebook groups. Lemonade was a great one for that, but I would say if you find that your target demographic is on Facebook, and I take a step back because Facebook, to me, I haven't been on Facebook in forever. I used to for years, Facebook ads, Facebook groups, Facebook this, and Jan 6, a couple of years ago, I was like, nope, we're out. Censorship, not my thing. So on that, if your demographic is there, but I would also encourage Nathan to look at what where some of the fitness influencers might be, because a lot of times we spend so much time trying to invent the wheel rather than just step into somebody else's wheel and like convince some of their wheels to come over to this wheel. And that's what most of this is really, is like, Nathan, there might be a million Facebook groups and you might not be getting what you want there. I would encourage you to branch out and be like, what other groups? What are the hottest, latest, and greatest fitness apps? Have you done research on where, the top fitness influencers are hanging out, where their community is? Like, don't invent the wheel. Look at other people that already have communities. And if Facebook groups is the thing, yeah, let's talk about that. But if it's not, if there's other where the fitness, community is right now, or your niche community, go there. Spend all your time there, because Facebook's not gonna be around. What? That's where I'll end.
Well, hey, thank you so much, Jamie. I appreciate it. All right, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today.